And here we are, spawning in the upper left, in the blue. He is representing ENCE Esports. Some call him the best player in the world. I call him SERRAL. And his opponent in the bottom right, in the red, on an absolute tear in this tournament and in the weeks preceding. The Kingslayer, he is ZEST. And of course, SERRAL, he doesn't really lose to Protoss players. This is kind of the first storyline we're looking at here as we get on into this game. He has probably one of the all-time best win rates against ZVP. In fact, SERRAL was one of the reasons that on different social media platforms, people started to talk about why, or in fact how, Zerg was so imbalanced in Protoss back in 2020. Because SERRAL, I think he had a, there was a solid streak where he played 40 straight ZVZ series and did not lose a single one, something to that effect. So absolutely a killer in this matchup, able to make styles that other players don't make work. I mean, even after we saw this change on into a more Stargate-focused style that has been played more and more often, well, SERRAL will still go Ling Bane Hydra and kill Protoss players. Maybe not a player of ZEST caliber, but certainly he makes these styles that have kind of been seen as outdated, either because you get Storm faster or because of the Stargate styles, things like that, and he still makes them work. So we're going to have to see what he has in store for us today, because once again, all-time great ZVP player and, well, all-time great player in general. Of course, on the other side of the map, ZEST has looked absolutely dominant. It seems to be a thing that he does every year right around IEM Katowice time. Of course, he was the finalist there. He did not win the IEM Katowice, but he certainly made finals. And looked really good in that too, which is, of course, preceding when this tournament happened. And it seems like every year around this time, ZEST really turns it up another notch. He goes from, man, this guy can beat everyone, to, man, this guy probably will beat everyone. And certainly, I mean, he had a great run of ZVP, or excuse me, of PVZ through that tournament, through IEM Katowice. And of course, this tournament happened, I want to say a week later, 2 weeks later. So still should be riding that high. Absolutely a killer. And we do, of course, see that Stargate opener coming on down from ZEST here in this game number 1. Importantly, and it's important to note that this is a Stargate before Warpgate, which is the more traditional way you're going to want to play a PvC. Now, Trap, back at the end of 2020, beginning of 2021, he kind of happened upon this idea where, okay, well, what if I get my Warpgate before my Stargate? Which seems a bit weird. You don't get your Stargate units quite as fast. You don't get that quick 330 Oracle that allows you to maybe get some damage done. But on the flip side, the Zerg player does not have quite as easy of a scout because, of course, one of the things that Zerg players look at is, okay, it's 2 minutes and 20 seconds. Is their Warpgate spinning out? If there's not, it's a Stargate. 99 times out of 100. Yeah, there's sometimes some robo shenanigans, but 99 times out of 100, it will be a Stargate. But if Trap goes and gets it at that time, he will have Warpgate faster, or in anyone, I guess, but Trap is the one that came up with this idea. You get your Warpgate a little bit faster, which means, well, your Stargate's a little bit slower, sure, but it does mean you have a Warpgate that much faster so you can defend your third base a little bit easier. As we do see here, ZEST going to go take that 350 third base. The thing, though, is a lot of Protoss kind of realize that if I go Stargate first and then I get Void Ray first and then go immediately into an Oracle after that, I'm going to have all I need to defend this third base even without getting that faster Warpgate, which does, of course, mean Stargate units are out a little bit faster and does still mean that you have a somewhat decent Oracle timing. It's not in the opponent's base at 330. It's closer to 415, 420. But it's still somewhat useful. Actually, this is pretty cool here. We're going to see ZEST pair his Oracle with his Void Ray coming on in, and there is no Spore in this base, by the way, so we're going to see the Oracle dive on in here, get a couple workers. Now, the Void Ray, well, it's going to be forced on back, only so tanky, but bringing that on in there meant that ZEST got about 3 workers instead of the 1 that he was most likely to get. And actually, no, now there is no Spore here in the natural whatsoever, so another couple workers will go down, and ZEST showing some really nice control here in this game number 1. Now, of course, we notice there's another Stargate on the way. ZEST going for that double Stargate build, which means we're going to see 6 to 8 Void Rays. And, well, we're going to see exactly where he goes out of that way. Did he cancel that Stargate? No, he did not. Okay. Anyway, this is a little bit faster Twilight Arc Council that I'm used to seeing with that Forge after you get that double Stargate play. because of course you do want to go into charge, go into +1 behind this, but generally it's, I want to say it's, well, I guess this did go down right around 5 minutes, 4:45, so no big deal. We will see double Void Ray on the way, going up to about 6 to about 8, somewhere in that neighborhood, which does allow the Zerg to be really damn safe. These pushes that, well, or excuse me, the Protoss to be pretty damn safe. These pushes that Zerg likes to go for with a bunch of Queens and a bunch of Ravagers, if you can catch it going across the map. Well, if you get 6 to 8 Void Rays, you can generally do a pretty good job of holding it, and also, well, 6 to 8 Void Rays will absolutely shellac, will absolutely annihilate the building 4th base if SERRAL is not in position, so that's something we see Protoss players make use of a lot. Now, of course, SERRAL at this point, we don't really see any idea that he's going for some sort of Queen Walk. Of course, there is an Evo chamber down now, which does mean that he's most likely not going for a Queen Walk, because why would you commit to an Evo? Why would you commit to +1 if you're planning on just kind of all-inning at 5 minutes, 6 minutes? And that being said, of course, SERRAL, he's on 68 workers. He's going up to 70, 74, and he does have a Hydrogen on the way. So this is not going to be your standard. It's kind of funny that this is a standard build now, but this is not going to be your standard Roach, Ravager, Queen, Ling all-in that starts moving out on the map at 5 minutes with the Queens and kind of hits around 6 minutes. If it's the Soul Stroll version. Of course, there's the German Taxi, which is a little bit faster, and then there are Nidus versions too, but really it's been the Queen Walk that has been the popular one over the last, well, probably the last month and a half. But yeah, no, SERRAL going Hydraling Bane in this style. We talked about this when, or I talked about this when I opened up the game, in that, well, SERRAL, he likes to do things like this. This is a more outdated style. It tends to be outdated for the most part because Protoss players have in part really figured out how they get on into Storm rather quickly. And Storm, well, it absolutely eviscerates pretty much everything that a Zerg player has to go for. It's really good against Storms because, you know, or sorry, it's really good against Hydras because they don't have a lot of HP. They're light units. It's really good against Zerglings, not a lot of HP. It's really good against Banelings, not a lot of HP. So everything just kind of dies there, which is, of course, why Hydraling Bane has fallen out of the meta. But really, if anyone can make it work, it is SERRAL. Now, of course, Zest here does have Storm on the way. He has +1 just about done. He is fully into his ground tech. Now, notice, of course, no more Void Rays on the way. We're only up to 4. Zest not really going for that 6 to 8 style that I anticipated that we were talking about, and this allows him to get into his ground tech maybe just a little bit more. Now, it's not going to be, sometimes you see +1 or just a single Stargate with the 353rd base into ground attack, into ground upgrades, into ground tech. That's not exactly what we see on in here, and SERRAL, well, he's kind of realized the way this game is going, has realized just quite how buttoned up Zest is. Of course, on Death Aura, it's almost impossible to break the first 4 bases that a player is going for. Now it's possible, but it is very difficult. So we will see SERRAL here. He's taking his 5th base. He's advancing up the tech tree. And sure, he does have +1. He does have Bailing Speed is done now at this point. We have all of this. But notice he understands that this game is going a little bit later. He has added that second Evo. He is going on into Carapace behind this. And Zest, for his part, we're going to see the first a little bit of aggression here he's got on the map ever since he did move across the map with those Oracles, with those Void Rays. It's just going to be a little bit of a charge lot drop, and SERRAL's like, okay, whatever. Like, this is not going to get a whole lot. And now we're seeing this point where both players are kind of playing this game of chicken about how quickly they go on into the late game, right? SERRAL, realizing kind of how this game is going to be, adds his 5th base. He's going into Hive. He is adding a Spire here. He's doing all those things. And Zest, kind of seeing part of this by dropping in with the charge lots, is going to say, okay, SERRAL, you're not attacking me in any short order. Let's add that 3rd Stargate. Let's add that Fleet Beacon, all of those things, and really put myself into this late game situation too, as he does take his 5th base. So once again, this is just kind of this idea of both players are saying, well, okay, well, the game's going late. Might as well do what I can to get there as fast as possible, advance my tech, advance my economy as fast as possible to really make this worthwhile. And interestingly enough, we do see SERRAL going for +1 melee here for his ground units as well. And I guess maybe this is for Broodlords later on. I mean, yes, he has Zergling Banelings on the map, but realistically, it's going to be rather difficult for him to get some Banelings into a mineral line. And there's a certain point there where you're just too many carriers where you don't get a lot, but okay, this is what he's doing. We're going to see a bunch of Ultralisks get built here, and this is actually a really cool thing that I want to say it was Rogue that first started doing this. SERRAL will have to avoid the Storms coming on in here, and the Storms are going to be somewhat decent, but actually they're not really going to land all that well, so Banelings will connect on a bunch of these High Templar, and this is actually going to be a rather good trade here for SERRAL. Now, he will be forced back up because of the charge lot warp ends, and, well, unsupported Hydras are just not really all that great. But I want to say it was Rogue that we first start to do this, where you do get that Ultra Cav, and you get 1-1, you get into 2-2, you get into 3-3, and you build like 6 to 8 Ultras, and they sit below your army. So you kind of go Ultra Corruptor, Viper, something like that. And then when you go on into things, when you go on the attack, well, okay, that's interesting. It looks like a couple Corruptors were made, and that was the War Prism was recalled. Anyway. You just build a lot of Corruptors, you build a lot of Vipers, but you build those 6 to 8 Void Rays, or excuse me, 6 to 8 Ultras. And what they do is they provide a really good opportunity here for them to just dive on top of these Storms, on top of these High Templar, forcing the High Templar to morph into Archons, and taking a lot of damage out of the Protoss army, because of course the reason that a Zerg is always afraid of this carrier army is not necessarily the carriers. Now, carriers are powerful, +2 carrier timings are really strong, but realistically, if you got 36 Void Ray or 36 Corruptors, you're kind of fine, right? Especially if they get 1-1 upgrades, 2-2 upgrades, things like that. So, oh, that's a lot of charge lots running on into the army of Zero, or the run by of SERRAL here. But anyway, the scary thing is the Storms, right? Because carriers have, or excuse me, Corruptors have really high armor, so you're fine. You're not all that worried. All you got to do there is, well, you just kind of dive on top of them, they all die. You knock them down before all the interceptors are out, and no big deal. However, when the Storm is on there, and a Storm is taking 1/3 to 50% of all the Corruptors' HP all at once, suddenly these carriers are less carried. All the Banelings are going to connect on top of all of these Zealots, and that's going to be rather expensive here for ZEST. But also, it's 11 minutes into this game. He's going into +3 ground, +2 air. He's getting into his real tech units. He doesn't really care about a bunch of... I mean, Zealots are nice. They allow you to do some stuff. But... honestly, that was supply that ZEST wanted to get rid of. Now, SERRAL, for his part, he's trading rather well. This is not a game where you see the Zerg down 3 to 5 to 7k resources at this point, because not a lot has happened. ZEST has been able to take his 5 bases pretty much uncontested, but so has SERRAL. SERRAL now on, what is that, 6 bases? Pretty much every base but one of the rich Vespene bases that he can expect to take at this point. As now, well, it's a lot of Hydras, it's a lot of Queens, and it's a lot of Spores. So this is going to be very difficult for ZEST to attack on into. But of course, well, those Zealots that ZEST built earlier, they're now going to attack on into SERRAL's 12-ish, 1 o'clock base. Right now, for the moment, looks like with the Ultra here, and Zerglings on the flank. Yeah, this is not going to get a whole lot done. Now, it is, of course, 2-2, not 3-3 yet. And do we have Ultra upgrades yet? Interesting. SERRAL got Ultra... oh, never mind. He has both. I just can't read. So yeah, we do have Ultra upgrades there. So these are going to be 2-4 Ultras for the moment, soon to be 3-5 Ultras. As there we go, SERRAL getting on into the 3-3. So how many Corruptors does he have? That's the question. 13 Corruptors. He's going to go up to 16, I think. Yeah, going up to 16 Corruptors. And that's not quite enough. I would like to see a couple more on in there. But again, SERRAL, actually, he's done a really good job of bringing his drone count back down. He was up on 92 workers at one point, but with all of the Spores that he's been building, he's done a pretty good job of bringing that count down to a more manageable number, because he's been able to build his bank, sure, but there comes a point where you don't want almost half of your supply in your economy when you're facing against this terrifying, extremely supply efficient late game Protoss army. Now these Hydras, actually, they're going to be sacrificed a little bit too, but will they get a... oh, they're going to get a carrier. That is going to be rather nice for SERRAL. SERRAL, yeah, of course, would you like to get more? Absolutely, but those Hydras were sacrificed, right? They don't really... they're not all that useful anymore. You want Infestors, you want Corruptors, you want Vipers. Oh, nice abduct there. We will see one... oh, carrier. There we go. Carrier will go on down. And now we're kind of at this point of the game where SERRAL is looking to push his creep as much as possible. Now, don't get me wrong, SERRAL is looking to push his creep as much as possible through the entire game. However, at this point of the game, he's trying to push it for one specific purpose. He wants to get his creep as close to the Protoss base as possible, so he can put Spores as close to the Protoss base as possible, hem him in like that, and make it impossible for these carriers to really take a fight, which really takes their supply out of the game, and then it's just ground army, a ground army that SERRAL can reasonably kind of deal with. Now, of course, this run by coming on in once again, as the Zealots are going to get bugged out on the Spores. Totally fine there. Ultras, as fantastic a deterrence of Zealot run-bys. That's exactly what they're for, nothing else. But here we are. Now we have ZEST. He's posturing on the map. He says, look, I kind of want this high ground base, as we will see probably SERRAL take the high ground base on the other side of the map eventually. ZEST says, look, I kind of want this high ground base, and to do so, I need to remove the creep from it. I need to remove your vision from it. So that's what ZEST is doing on in here, and we should probably see him take this base at some point. Not exactly sure how quickly that will be, but notice ZEST has kind of realized that he's done with his Air Force for the time being. He has, what is that, 4 carriers, doesn't really need all that much more. As the scary portion of the army here from ZEST is the Ultras. So what is he doing? He's doing 3 Immortals at a time. He's building this army that really deals with Ultras rather well. But what he does, of course, have to be worried about is, well, eventually when we get into 3/3 Broodlords, Immortals, Immortals and Archons are really bad against Broodlords. So carriers are as well, but look at, or excuse me, Templar are as well. But look at this run by coming on in. That's actually, the Ultras are getting a really good job here, knocking down a couple of Immortals. I love how the cannons are doing better than the Immortals. And yeah, Serral's just going to give this base up. He realizes, okay, this army that ZEST has right now is maybe a little bit too powerful. Don't really want to deal with that. So he's going to be forced to back on up here. Going back, but now, hey, the ground army is a little bit separated from the air army, so this is probably the army, kind of an army that Serral can take, the type of fight that Serral can take here. As he is going to neural a lot of these Ultras and Archons, which means they will go on down here, but once again, ZEST is pushing, and Serral needs a resupply, and it looks like his resupply here will be a lot of, only 7 Broodlords actually, but this army, oh my god, there's a lot of Stalkers. Stalkers, of course, actually trade somewhat decently against Ultras. They do bonus damage to armor, but anyways, now with the Broodlords out, we do see, of course, see ZEST go on into carriers again as he realizes, okay, well, the Broodlords, this ground army I built, it's pretty much useless. But carriers, they're really good against Broodlords. So this game really is a game of cat and mouse from a build perspective, from an army perspective here. Serral and ZEST both trying to build the best composition that they can to deal with the other and hide that composition as long as possible. So, say Serral has 20 Broodlords all of a sudden, and ZEST only has Immortals and Archons, for example. Now that's not exactly what's happening here, but you get the idea. Now, of course, we have Serral moving into this, well, almost a Broodlord Infestor tech, and this base from ZEST will not be allowed to go up. Now, of course, Serral did lose the 12 o'clock base, so he is down on bases just a little bit. Now, these Stalkers that were warped in to deal with the Ultras, well, they're going to try to get some harass of their own, but now the Ultra Zerglings are in here, and will they get the, oh, they will! Wow, really good job there. Oh, I guess there's detection? The Infestor did a really good job of burrowing in time, but it's not going to be enough. And now, well, Serral's going to take a rather nice fight here on the right-hand side. Only 2 carriers. Really, that's the only anti-air that ZEST has. And actually, well, those carriers are getting abducted down. How much energy do we have on the Vipers? Looks like we probably have 1 more abduct. There we go. So really not a whole lot that can deal with these Broodlords. I guess, unless there's some sort of, well, Stalker warp-ins, and they really don't want to do that late on in this game. So looks like the Stalkers on the bottom side are still taking, never mind, those are changelings. So the Stalkers have been cleaned up here, and now Serral, he's going to siege this 9 o'clock base, or excuse me, 3 o'clock base here from ZEST with a lot of Broodlords. These are, of course, while their initial impact is it's 2-2, after that they are 3-3, so they do a lot of damage here. And yeah, the Stalkers are going to warp on in, but this is a lot of Broodlords, and they're Infestors behind this, so the Stalkers are going to warp on in. We're going to see a fungal land here, or Blinding Cloud as well. These Stalkers cannot fight, and this is going to be a really fantastic fight here for Serral. Now the Stalkers are going to blink again, but these Blinding Clouds are still existing, and oh yeah, we're going to see an Abduct on top of the Warp Prism. That actually is not going to do a whole lot here. But actually, no, it looks like ZEST has just enough to punch on through, just enough anti-air to make this worthwhile here. As now the Storms are going to land, but no, 3 Broodlords will survive. And now, well, ZEST has spent his entire bank. He has spent his, and he's lost a base too, so he doesn't have nearly as much economy as he did prior. So what does Serral do? More of the same. More Broodlords, more Corruptors, more Vipers, more Infestors, building that high-tech army that this Gateway army, this majority Gateway army that ZEST has built for himself really cannot fight. So the Broodlords, though, they're not out, and this is maybe an opportunity here for Stats to take a fight, to maybe knock down another base before the Broodlords are truly out, before we have the Infestors doing what they want to do. And there we go. The base will go on down, but realistically, this base was mostly mined out anyway. So now the Stalkers are going to go on forward, knock down a Broodlord, but behind this, of course, we do have more stuff. Queens are going to keep fighting, of course, keep these Broodlords alive. And how many Infestors do we have on the field? Actually, none right now. They're only in production. So that is a bit of a problem. You do want those Infestors to curtail the blinks, the wayward blinks, the daring blinks of ZEST here. But once again, the Broodlords, the siege is coming. And what do we have? We only have 2 carriers, 3 Void Rays on the map here, as it looks like ZEST is just giving this base away. He realizes that, okay, I need more Void Rays. I need more something to be able to take this fight. And actually, ZEST, I mean, notice, he's only 188 out of 200 supply. He has the money. Seems like he's not totally sure where he wants to build at the moment, so he will lose this base. And no, he's just going for a base trade here. This is pretty cool. right? Because Broodlords are really slow. Broodlords do not adapt to a Protoss player moving around all that much. So ZEST, he goes for that a bit of aggression, and then he's like, okay, wait a minute here. I need to actually fight this army. I'm not in a position where I can realistically win a base trade. I don't have the army for that. So I'm going to have to go back. I'm going to be forced back here. And yeah, 10 workers will go down, but that's a trade, 10 to 9. And SERRAL will lose a base, whereas ZEST will not. So this is a really nice move here from ZEST, doing a really good job of curtailing the Zerg player's economy. I guess the Ultra is going to do something here. And, oh yeah, DTs will get warped on it, which means this Ultra, yeah, it's going to have to be forced back up here. There's no detection. But ZEST, he knocks out a base. He knocks out a bunch of workers here from SERRAL. And right now, yes, ZEST, there was a time where his bank was totally spent, but at the moment, he's got a better bank than SERRAL does. And look at this, we got a recall coming on in because this is a fairly large run by coming on in here. So SERRAL, well, he's playing the map well, but ZEST making use of the advantages of his race will prevent that from happening. But here's the thing. Because he forced that recall, ZEST's army is now stuck on the right side of the map. He can't realistically go on into the left-hand side of the map and do something because, well, he's not going to be able to recall. Oh, look at that. Oh, this is pretty cool. So we have a neural on this carrier, which is going to target down, it's going to target down at least one High Templar. Now the Stalkers on the left-hand side, they're trying to get something done. I don't think they're really going to be able to accomplish all that much here. And now, well, SERRAL, it feels like his army is just that much better. He will lose 6 more workers. Actually, no, this, with the Archons and the Stalkers, yeah, this run-by protection will not be sufficient here for SERRAL, so he's going to lose another base. But ZEST's army is cornered. ZEST's army is absolutely cornered here. And yes, storms are good. Feedback is good, sure, but I don't really know exactly what ZEST is supposed to do right now. Yeah, storms are going to land. Absolutely. But okay, the Archons are going to come on in, and we do need to see some good fungals come on in here. But yeah, actually, this is a fairly good concave, and we will see some really nice feedbacks coming onto these queens. So these queens are not going to be all that useful, but the carriers are going to go down, and we're seeing the last energy of the queens being used on the transfuses. SERRAL now taking a 40 supply lead, all of that in army. And he will be forced back once again, but again, SERRAL, actually, you know what? His bank is, I was going to say his bank is still there, but his bank is not. SERRAL losing 2 bases on the left-hand side. Yeah, he's mining from this 12 o'clock base once again, but that's only 1 base. Realistically, his main base is mined out. His natural is mostly mined out. His 3rd base is totally mined out. His 4th base got a little bit left, but I mean, SERRAL, he's mining 1K resources a minute. Saving grace, though, of course, is the fact that ZEST also is on those low worker counts and is also a little bit sad. We have the Ultra trying to save itself with the Ultra Burrow. That's not going to work all that well. And it looks like a fairly decent Zergling run by going to find this 3rd base. And of course, these are 3/3 Cracklings. There are no Zealot armor upgrades, so the Cracklings will win this fight. Of course, as more get warped in, Zerglings will be forced back. And once again, yeah, SERRAL, he will be forced. Actually, no, it looks like he lost this base. It's not even going to get canceled. So as good as it was looking for SERRAL a couple minutes ago, and it still does look good for SERRAL. He's got an army supply lead. His army is a terrifying one. It is a far more expensive one, especially from the gas perspective. ZEST has done a very good job of curtailing the economy of SERRAL, making it so that SERRAL really cannot build that bank that he wants to build up to allow for those resupplies. But it should be noted at this point, ZEST's army is a lot of gateway units. Yes, the supplies are close enough. They're within 20. SERRAL has, you know, what is that? 45 supply of Broodlords. ZEST has about 45 supply of Blink Stalkers. It is not anywhere near the amount of cost efficiency that we see here. And once again, we will see a recall get forced. But with these infestors, with these Zerglings, well, SERRAL is once again going to take a really good fight. Now, one DT is going to try to do hero's work here, going to be a full-on Zero tool, but will not be successful. Now we have the siege coming on in once again. What a fungal, catching all of those Stalkers into the blinding clouds. The Stalkers just can't do anything. Yeah, they're going to blink on top of things now, but there's not enough blinding clouds on top of where the Stalkers blink. And the army of ZEST, I was worried about a complexity, and we were right to worry. So ZEST, his army falling apart here, down double the army supply of his opponent, down half the army supply of his opponent. ZEST losing his last mining base here to the ever-present supply of Broodlings, shredding this army, and there's just nothing left. Yeah, ZEST is going to keep fighting for the time being, but this one carrier is just going to get targeted down. There's nothing in the air. There's barely anything on the ground. Nothing can really get in range of these Broodlords. And yeah, we're going to see some storm drops. That's really cool, ZEST. What do you have at home? The answer is nothing whatsoever. 145 supply to 54 from an, well, 145 army supply to 54. Yeah, these storms are going to be nice, but that is just a style move at the end of the day. GG, SERRAL. He's going to take game number 1. Here we are, spawning in the bottom right in the red. He is, of course, representing Dragon Phoenix Gaming, down 1-0 off of a marathon. Game number 1. Give it up for ZEST. And his opponent at the upper left in the blue, up 1-0 for NC Esports. The finisher, he is SERRAL. And of course, Lightshade, it's a little bit more difficult to play the type of game that ZEST played in game number 1. It's smaller, and now it is somewhat choky, but you don't have quite as free of a third base. So you can't just quite immediately kind of turtle on into those 4 bases like we saw ZEST do. But of course, we're going to have to see how ZEST opts to play this game. Does he go for that Stargate style once again that has really been so popular? Oh, look at that. ZEST will be able to block the gas just a little bit. I mean, at the end of the day, who cares? Not that big of a deal. But, you know, it's pretty cool. A little bit of a cheeky move there. Now, of course, well, the gas that SERRAL took is kind of the gas he wants to take if he's worried about ZEST doing a cannon rush. You want to do one as far away from the ramp as possible so the cannons can't start taking your gas down and deny you the Ravagers, or the gas for the Ravagers, or the layer, or whatever you're going to use to try to break out of that. Of course, ZEST, I don't think I've ever seen him cannon rush, so that's not a big deal whatsoever. But something to think about. As now, once again, we do see ZEST going for that expand, and we're just going to look to see whether it is Stargate first, whether you're going to see a Warp Gate into Stargate, whether ZEST goes for a Twilight opener. Of course, not nearly as powerful, not nearly as popular, but this is a best of 5. And as adaptable, as dynamic as these pro players are, you can't afford to just do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. You do, as a Protoss player, as a Zerg player, you do kind of need to throw in some cheeky moves, some different builds into the mix. Otherwise, well, there we go. Oh, okay, this is interesting. ZEST did start that Warp Gate for a second, and then he got into Stargate. Now, I wonder whether this was trying to trick SERRAL, because he's like, okay, SERRAL, I know you're looking at this now because you moved your Overlord, but your Overlord has stopped moving, so maybe you're not looking anymore. That may be a little bit of a stretch, but anyway, it is, of course, Stargate into Warp Gate now. And, well, we're just going to see where this goes. It's most likely, of course, going to be Void Ray into Oracle. And this is a much shorter map. This is a much better map for the Queen Walk all-ins, the Queen Roach Ravager all-ins, that we have seen players like Dark, like Rogue, like Raynor use to such great effect. Well, pretty much every Zerg used to such great effect here against this style. Now, does it always win? No. Is it a broken strat? No. But it does seem to be the best way to deal with these Stargate styles that the Protoss players are going for, unless you want to go into a 30-minute game that is arguably Protoss favored towards the late game. So with that being said, SERRAL going on into things. We're going to have to see how many queens he builds, whether he stops at about 46 workers, or whether he does go on up to that full 60. Really that kind of 46 worker mark is a good tell. If he starts cutting at that point, if he just doesn't build anymore, starts building Roach and Ravagers, you kind of know he's going all in. Well, that makes a lot of sense here, as, well, SERRAL's not going to get the full scout, but he will find his way on into the main base and say, okay, you got a Void Ray. Okay, I know what you're doing, ZEST. This is, again, the standard build. This is what you see players do more often than not. And ZEST, once again, he's going to take that third base. Now, he's going to take the triangular third, which is maybe a little bit more difficult to hold, which is actually kind of interesting if you're going to go for that Stargate tech. It is a much more wide open third base, and of course, Zergs love to attack on into wide open thirds. But what it also does is it forces ZEST, or excuse me, it forces SERRAL to choose. Does he attack on into the third base? Does he try to kill the third base? Or does he try to break his way on into the natural? Because with as many queens as SERRAL has, once again, we do see ZEST with this pretty cool technique here going on in with the Void Ray and the Oracle, but there are enough queens here, and actually, SERRAL's going to have some really nice moves there. We'll be able to cancel things in time. There are enough queens here, and the Spores will get morphed. That actually, well, so ZEST is not going to get any damage done. His Oracle's going to go down to 20 HP, so that is 3 more queen shots. What is that? 3 more queen shots before it goes down. But there we go. Second Stargate is on the way. And of course, well, Warp Gate is now done, which does make this third base relatively safe with the Void Rays, with the Warp Gate. But here we go. 430 Roach Warren. Lair is on the way. SERRAL, he's got more queens on the way too. This is absolutely going to be a soul stroll coming on in here. We're going to see some queens. We're going to see more queens. We're going to see some roaches, some Ravagers. And SERRAL is just going to start walking across the map. Notice he's already starting to build his highway. That gets his queens there that much faster. And now, it's kind of interesting. One thing that I always kind of have expected to see with this build is an Overlord creep highway. But I guess maybe you're a little bit worried about the Overlord, or about Void Rays going on in and sniping a bunch of Void Rays before you're really able to, or sniping a bunch of Overlords, supply blocking you before you're really able to find your way across the map. So SERRAL, he's got the queens walking. He has 8 of them. So sometimes you see like 10, 12. That is not, he's just trying to hit the earliest possible timing here. And of course, it makes sense on Lightshade. Lightshade is a very short rush distance, shortest only to submarine on the map. So yes, ZEST will scout this. He will realize what's happening, but his static defense is maybe just a little bit late. Now, cannons are, of course, on the way. Shield batteries are on the way. There's only one at the third base, and SERRAL does look to be attacking on into this third base. It's a position he will have to break if he wants to eventually go on into the natural. But, of course, with the Ravagers here, this static defense is not going to be all that useful. But the Void Rays will be able to target down, take down one of these Ravagers before they really get a whole lot done here. And actually, ZEST looks like he's having a fairly decent hold thus far. But, of course, this is only round 1. There's still a lot of queens here. We're waiting for the creep to get even further along. And, well, the longer this goes, of course, the more SERRAL has. But, of course, the more that ZEST has, too, because ZEST, he's up 6 workers on his opponent. He has that good tech. He's putting himself in a good position to win the late game if he can only hold. That is the question. His shield battery overcharge is now popped, and that is just giving SERRAL the cue to back on up, to wait for the shield battery overcharge to finish, and then go on it. Back again here, as we will have transfusions spent, but queens are kind of running out of energy at this point. First Void Ray will now go down for the first time here, and, well, SERRAL's doing a really good job of fighting where the Void Rays are not here, as the static defense is starting to go down here. Queen's firing away, and we will see another Void Ray. Oh, it will stay alive just barely, on like 5 HP, but the Void Rays are starting to get rather low, and the queens are still firing strong. But SERRAL looks like he's starting to realize that maybe this isn't going to break through, is not going to kill ZEST here with what he has. So, what do we have? More queens on the way. We have a Hydroden on the way here, so he's going to get a bunch of Hydras to deal with these Void Rays that are proving to be such a thorn in his side. Now, it does look here like SERRAL will be able to break the third base, but I'm not sure that whether the breaking of, oh, look at that, Ravager Bowels will land, so that's actually going to be rather nice, knocking down some of these shields, and there we go, the Oracle going on down as well. So it does look like the third base will be broken, but I'm not sure it's ever a question of whether the third breaks. The question is whether ZEST breaks, and that is a lot more questionable here, as ZEST, once again, going down to 47 workers, lacking on in the, well, he's going to lose all the workers at this base, and now it looks like Zerglings, they're going to go on a bit of adventures. Now the Voiders, they're going to try to dive on in here. They think there's enough to deal with all these queens, but some of the Ravager piles are going to land here, and some of these super low Voiders are going to start to get targeted down. So they only have 3 Void Rays on the map, and now, well, it's Ravager Ling going to try to break its way on into the natural here. Void Rays are eating more and more Ravager shots, so yes, more Void Rays are being produced. But, I mean, the queens, they're continuing to walk. It is equal numbers of queen to Void Ray. And while queens have transfuses, there is more than 1 queen of HP per queen here. So that's going to be a little bit difficult, as we don't have a lot of shield batteries here in this natural. And ZEST actually getting rather close to getting supply blocked as well. So it looks like here the Void Rays, they're going to start to go down here. Ravager Piles are going to not land, just barely. But the queens, they're fighting their way up. And again, there are more queens. 3 queens at a time versus 2 Void Rays at a time. As now, Zealots are going to try to run some interference here. But, well, it's a bunch of Zerglings. It's a bunch of Ravager Piles going on in. And more queens pop into their way in. It looks like ZEST, by the skin of his teeth, is going to get broken here in this game number 2. As the queens continue their waddle, the Zerglings, the Ravagers continue their waddle. And you've got to remember, Hydras are on the way. Hydras damn good against these Void Rays. That's going to be it. GG. ZEST. He's going to fall down. SERRAL, he's going to take game number 2. And really the question is, what does ZEST have in store here for this game number 3? Now, once again, we do see ZEST going on in for that hatch block, as he is so wont to do. But again, Zerg players at this point have kind of realized that any sort of competent Protoss player is going to do that like every game. So just send your drone at 120 minerals instead of 160, take your third base, no big deal. And there we go, gas on the way, pool on the way. Nothing weird as of yet for either player. And this makes a lot of sense. This is a bigger map, even if the acceleration zones do make the rush distance feel a little bit smaller. There are, of course, 7 mineral patches aside, which is on the larger side. I think the most we've ever seen was Ice and Chrome with 8. So certainly a bigger map in terms of things you can actually mine from. In fact, you know, the bottom middle right and the upper middle left pretty much never get mined from. Games normally end before those kind of middle bases on both sides get taken. So it's always kind of cool, actually, when we see a game where that does happen here. As we see, Jess is just being really annoying with this probe. It actually takes a decent amount of APM to make sure that you only mine a little to mess with the eye, but not enough that you actually start to go and until you totally mine. So Zest spending a lot of APM on this, but I mean, SERRAL absolutely up to the task here. It's just a little annoying, and one of those things that if you're, you know, not at the caliber of ZEST or SERRAL, doesn't really make that much of a difference. But, you know, the 10 mineral difference there absolutely, if you don't have your worker splits properly, it can make a difference. So maybe worthwhile here is once again ZEST going for the warp gate, or excuse me, Stargate into warp gate, as has been his want, as has been his preferred style in this series. But again, this makes sense. I was thinking that if there was ever going to be a deviation from that style, it was going to be on game 2 on Lightshade, or maybe a later game where we go on, if we go on into Oxide. But certainly not on Juggernaut, certainly not on Romanticized, certainly not on Death Aura. Those are kind of the holy trinity of this Stargate style. Those are really the best maps for it. So we're going to have to see what in the current map, or in the map pool this tournament was played on. Of course, now we have Beckett Industries, I want to say, that kind of gives you 4 bases for free once again. And it's a lot shorter rush distance, so it means the Zerg gets less bases as the game goes on, which does make your that quick Stargate style even more powerful because it's harder for the Zerg to trade efficiently. Anyway, that is not in this current map pool, so not really worth talking about all that much, as, well, we do have the 3rd base on the way here for SERRAL. And seeing no inkling that he maybe wants to go for a timing, but again, if he's going to go for the Queen Walk, we're going to see that 430, 440 Roach Warren, and that's going to be our big tell that says, okay, this is what SERRAL's going to go for. Other than that, well, we're probably going to see maybe go a little bit later. Not exactly sure. Now, of course, we're getting to that 3rd base timing there for ZEST, and there we go. Probe already moving out on the other side of the map, but look at this SERRAL. He's so good at getting Zerglings and getting Overlords, Overseers into the main base. He's going to get a full scout of everything that ZEST has gone for here. And yeah, these Adepts are going to try to be annoying, but will not be all that successful, as there are plenty of queens, and 2 queens at a time. So SERRAL still leaving the option open to go for this kind of timing, but of course, you want up to 7 queens, 7, 8 queens anyways to deal with the void repression that often comes from this 2 Stargate build. But we don't see that 3rd Stargate as of yet. Now, of course, if it's past 420, we're going to start to question things a little bit more, whether this is, never mind, 2nd Stargate. Okay, right on the mark. So SERRAL going for a layer here, going on up to 6 queens. I wouldn't be surprised to see a 7th go on up eventually. But now we're going to have this late Oracle go on in the hopes that maybe a late Oracle gets more damage done than an early Oracle, just because, well, your opponent's not expecting it anymore, but SERRAL absolutely on top of things. And SERRAL looks like he's going to go for some Lingbane Hydra play here in this game, which once again does feel a bit outmoded. You don't really, because of how quickly the Protoss player is able to get on into their Stargate tech, get on into their Storm with this build, with how quickly they take their 3rd base, it feels like this Lingbane Hydra style just doesn't get to where it needs to be fast enough. It does not get to that critical mass of breaking the Protoss player by the time the Protoss player is able to be broken. Now, of course, this is SERRAL, and he is one of the best in the world at this style, so he may know something that I don't. In fact, I guarantee that he knows something that I don't. But it's going to be interesting to see exactly how SERRAL wants to make this happen, because, again, it doesn't feel all that great. But there we go. Hydra Den on the way as the Baneling Nest does finish. We should see Baneling Speed on the way now that SERRAL does have that 150 gas to afford it. But there we go. He's on 57, 60 workers. He's going to go up to a little bit more than that. And now the question is, does he take that 4th base? Or does he just really lean into kind of a 3-base Lingbane Hydra all in? Now, ZEST, for his part, he's going to go up to, it looks like those 4, yeah, going up to the 4 Void Rays he went on up to in game number 1. And behind that, of course, we're going to see Charge, +1, Storm, Robo units, all the fun stuff that is going to allow ZEST to really be powerful on into this mid game. But once again, we do notice, and this is actually something that Raynor was able to punish ZEST for in the extreme extent back in Katowice, we notice ZEST does really not like to go for disruptors. It's just not part of his playstyle. It's I don't know if it's a blind spot in his play or whether he just doesn't like the way the unit works. So disruptors will not be on the map, which of course means Ravagers can maybe do a little bit more, but also Hydras are not all that great about splitting against disruptor shots, but they are, of course, much better at splitting against Storm. So this Hydraling Bane style may actually get a little bit more done than you expect it to. Well, of course, Storms are kind of the ultimate end shot for that anyways, but again, it's less splash to deal with. Doesn't mean this Hydraling Bane can do something, but this is going to be a Hydraling Bane Queen Walk. Actually, yeah, I didn't notice the Queen walking across the map. How many queens do we have? 6 queens. Baneling's morphing on in, and of course, no Baneling speed. So this is just going to be SERRAL looking to do something with slow Banes, some Queens, and some Hydras. And this is a weird build, right? This is not something we see all that often. Notice ZEST has kind of started to realize what's happening here, so we will see some sentries get warped in, some force fields, and those force fields are going to be honestly not all that great. They're only going to get 1 Baneling for their trouble here, and now SERRAL once again going to go on and engage. How many force fields do we have left? Does not look like all that much here, and yeah, the shield batteries, they're not even going to go up. So yeah, SERRAL's gonna break on in here. Some Archons, sure, they're gonna be nice, but the Banelings, they're gonna get stuck behind just a little bit. Now Banelings, Hydras, Zerglings getting on top of things. All of the Archons go down. All this static defense that, well, ZEST was trying to go for, not really gonna be all that useful. Banelings gonna run on into the natural, and they will not get stopped in time. 9 workers do go down, and now SERRAL, he's gonna knock down the Cyber Cores, well, maybe remove some of the tech here that ZEST is able to build. And there we go. We're going to start to see some warp gates, some cyber cores go on down, and that means, well, we're not going to see any, well, actually, no, never mind. There's none of the tech here that ZEST really cares about that is locked behind a cyber core. But now the Hydras are fighting. The Void Rays are doing their best to hold on. Of course, no Storm is on the way. And these High Templars, they're just starting to go down. Now, a couple of High Templars do get warped on in to deal with these Queens, and it actually just looked like SERRAL is starting to be forced back just a little bit. Charge is now done, +1 is done. There's enough in the air, there's enough on the ground that ZEST will be able to force this back, but you gotta remember, 9 workers did go down. That being said though, SERRAL did commit a lot to this. He lost 6 Queens in the measure. He's only just now taking his 4th base. So yeah, he got some damage done. Yes, he was able to knock down some tech. Yes, he was able to knock down some production. But at the end of the day, ZEST was able to force SERRAL back, and SERRAL's only on a 66 drone economy. This is not the massive economy that we expect from SERRAL here. So there we go. He will take that 4th base. It is now on the way. It is now done, but again, SERRAL, he's not really building any drones. This is just a continued all-in from the finished Zerg player. But now Baneling Speed is on the way, +1 is on the way, and I really do like this use of the High Templar to feed back the Queens, because again, the Queens are kind of what's scary here. Not the, I mean, the Hydras are scary, the Banelings are scary, but the Queens are what gives this army longevity. Now we have a bunch more Banelings. They're going to look to roll on in, and well, Archons are really good against that. So actually, Banelings are going to run on into the natural once again as well. SERRAL's going to try to take the main fight here. Baneling's going to get some somewhat decent connections here. Meanwhile, the main army is going to take the fight in favor of SERRAL as well. So once again, the Cyber Core goes down, and Baneling's now going to run into the main base. ZEST, is he paying attention? Looks like that answer is no. And, well, SERRAL going to kill 8. Probably could have gotten a lot more, to be honest. Now the Hydras are going to drop on top of things. All the Voiders are going to go down, and yes, it's a bunch of Mortals left, sure. But, I mean, Queen Hydra Ling is very good against Immortals. So the Hydras are going to go down here, and SERRAL looks like with his reinforcements has more than enough to start pushing on through. Yes, we do have Archons on the way. Charge lots are damn good to be sure, but it's just going to be 2 Archons and like 3 charge lots. That's not really all that much here for ZEST. Now, it's only 28 armies applied to 17. Both armies really taking some shots here, and SERRAL realizing that, okay, maybe I'm not going to totally beat ZEST here, so I'm going to start droning up again. Get +2, get a 5th base, and saturate my 4th, and go on into Hive. Go on into this further bit of tech here that will allow me to close out the game. Whether it's going to be Lurkers, whether it's going to be Vipers, I'm not totally sure. I do like Lurkers in this instance. If you get enough of them, they're actually very good against what's happening. And of course, SERRAL, he would not be SERRAL if we didn't see some Dropper Lords coming on in. So we're going to see some Baneling drops on the way from SERRAL here, and that's again pretty cool. It's not something we've seen at all this game or this series, so maybe not something that ZEST is paying attention to at the moment. But yeah, there we will. We will see Overlord speed as well. This, of course, allows SERRAL to get on into the main base of ZEST, see what's happening, but also it will allow him to get those Dropper Lords in that much faster. Now, ZEST, for his part, he's not really able to get into the tech that he's looking for. Stargate's not producing anymore. We're not going to see carriers for a good bit of time here. Now Storm is on the way. As honestly, ZEST's not even able to afford +2 because so +1 shields are on the way to make those Archons that much more powerful. But again, Baneling damage is spell damage, so not going to be all that useful there. Although granted, if Banelings are connecting into Archons, that's not really what you want. And ZEST really does have a terrifying spread here. It's going to be rather difficult, as he's going to looks like he's going to drop a bunch of charge lots on into the main base. And no, SERRAL is absolutely on top of this. This is not going to get anything done. It may get a Queen, but no, it's not even going to get that there. And really good job there, good cleanup there from SERRAL. And we're just going to see this this Warp Prism sit behind the main base here of SERRAL. Just keep some of the army of SERRAL back from the front, which is of course the entire goal here from ZEST. But oh no, the Queen has range, and this is on hold position, so yeah, this is just a dead Warp Prism. And that is going to be rather unfortunate, which means, of course, now SERRAL can say, ah, yes, I have no threats on my side of the map. Time to put some threats on your side of the map. And man, this creep is objectively disgusting. This creep is now on to ZEST's 4th base, because ZEST, really has had to keep himself buttoned down as close as possible on the off chance that he's maybe going to be able to hold in this game. As now we have Dropper Lords going into the main base. Not a lot, only four probes go down, but 4 out of 60 is a whole lot more than 4 out of 80. And now Dropper Lords, they're going to find their way on into the natural as well, but it looks like ZEST has what he needs to maybe make that happen. Now Storm is of course done here, but now we're going to see Banelings roll on in. ZEST not paying attention for the moment. The Banelings are going to get all of the High Templar, and that's just going to be it. SERRAL rolling through with Hydraling Bane Forces of Death. ZEST, he's going to fall down. SERRAL's going to take the series 3-0